2019. I am interviewing Frank Cain at the Newkirk Public Library. What motivated you to join the National Guard?
I was, there was a lot going on in 1966. Vietnam had been going on for about 3 years. And I got out of high school, and I was dating a young lady, Dana Kersey at the time. And graduated. I went to Oklahoma State Tech down at Okmulgee. I took auto mechanics. When I got out of there, I had a deferment while I was going to school. And as soon as I got out of that, Dana and I got married. And about 2 months after we got married, well, I went ahead and joined the National Guard. And the reason that I did that was I had beginning when I was in the first grade, I had a brother-in-law who had served in World War II in the Navy, in Korea in the Army, and then he had stayed in the Oklahoma National Guard ever since that he got out of Korea. So this was all when I enlisted. He'd been in the Guard quite a while. And he had really started me on a deal in the first grade that every time I passed a class, he would take me fishing for a weekend. So past the first grade, we go fishing for a weekend, and he starts my military career right there. And what he done was he wanted to teach me how to be calm in emergency situations, bad things. He wanted me to join the service. And for instance, one thing that we did was we set a trot line, and I couldn't swim, and he knew that. And when we got ready to set the trot line, well, the rivers are dangerous, and there was a lot of current. He said, "What I want you to do on this," he said, "you're going to get scared, but he said, I want you to trust me." And he said that I'll get you out of the problem that we may get into, which was stepping in a hole or something. Since I couldn't swim, I was on his shoulders. So anyway, we go to set the trot line, and we go along. We got the trot line set, but then when we came back to bait it with bait, he did step off in a hole. And I mean, I was scared. But I was thinking about what he said, so when we went underwater, I just sat there, just waited to come back up. Sure enough, a couple of steps later, he did. Well, that right there just got me started, thinking about the military. And every year after that, until I was in, I think I was the 5th grade, we done that almost every time. And I kind of lost myself here. Have I answered your question? Mm-hmm. Okay. I think the answer would be when I was about 7 years old, I was going to join the military when I got old enough.
Okay, so tell me a little about your time in basic training.
It was a shock. I didn't play sports or anything when I was in school, so I was really out of shape. And when we first got there, they unloaded us off a bus, and you didn't bring very much with you, but you had been issued a duffel bag. The first thing they done when we got off the bus, they formed us up in a formation, and we took off running. We left all of our gear there. Whatever anybody had, was just laying there on the ground. We're all in civilian clothes. And they run us about a mile one direction, about a half a mile another direction, and then a mile and a half back to where we were. Well, boy, I was in trouble, and there was about half of us were. And that was my first shock. What was the question again? About basic training. In about 2 weeks or so, then I had gotten to, by doing push-ups and horizontal bars and all that kind of stuff. It was a real workout. It was tough for me, but the guys, that had been athletic and stuff, they were doing really good. Things went, pretty good after basic. It was tough, and what we done to start with was preparing your mind to get you out of civilian mode and get you into military mode to fight. That was the deal. And you had to be in shape to do it. The first thing that shocked me about it was they told us, by the time you get out of basic, you're going to be able to run 12 miles with your gear on, and you're going to be able to fight when you get there. Well, I didn't believe that. I didn't think it was possible. Well, it is. By the time we got out of 8 weeks of training, why, we could do that. And I think that's probably it for basic, I believe.
Okay. Where did you do your basic training?
In Fort Lewis, Washington. Beautiful country, but it rains 10 months a year. And we got wet. We didn't see the sun for the first 43 days we were there.
Wow.
But if you travel there on a vacation, it's beautiful. But you go there in the Army, you get a workout. One of the bad things that was about it was probably the worst was they had a lot of peat moss, and when we would be on night movements, we'd get a lot of trees, almost like a jungle. But this peat moss was there was a lot of it was just on the surface, and it would be usually about 8 inches to a foot deep. But at night you couldn't tell, what was peat moss and what was just grass or something like that. And you always had your rifle and a lot of gear and stuff with you. And you'd be trying to walk down through the trees, and you'd fall through that peat moss. Well, you didn't know how far you was going to fall. It might be to your knees one time, and it may be over your head one time. Well, sometimes you'd get lost from the group. If somebody didn't hear you and you weren't supposed to make any noise, why, you had to either catch up, get out of the situation. You couldn't yell for help. That was a no-no. That's probably about one of the biggest things that I remember in basic.
Okay. What was your primary job after training?
I trained in AIT, Advanced Infantry Training. That's what the AIT stands for. On an 81 millimeter mortar. That's a tube that's about 4 feet long. It's about 4 inches in diameter. And it's trajectory weapon. Instead of shooting at your target, you shoot up in the air on an arch, and your round comes in from above instead of straight from you like a rifle or a pistol would be. And that was all done in AIT. In basic, the rifle and pistols is what you train on. Now, I'm in the infantry too. I didn't bring that out, but everything. I was a foot soldier, gravel grinder, and after I got out of AIT, got back home, I stayed with the M60 machine gun for the rest of my time in. I never did shooting at my mortar after I got home.
Okay. Where did you serve the majority of time in service?
I joined the Guard in the Chilocco unit. And I was there 3 years, and they shut it down. And about half of us moved to Fairfax, and we were there a year and a half. And then that one shut down, and I went to Ponca City for the next year and a half.
What rank are you most proud to have earned, and why?
What was it?
Number 6.
Oh, the rank?
Yes.
I was an E6 when I got out. That's a staff sergeant. And they offered me an E7 to stay in, and I turned that down. So the E6 was my highest.
How long was your enlistment?
6 years.
Wow.
I think all National Guards were then.
What medallion or citations are you most honored to have received, and why?
The citation, this medal is the Army Commendation Medal. And would you want to read this, or would you want me to read it, or something to?
We'll take pictures of it.
Okay. And what it's about is we were at summer camp, and we were on a mission to do an attack, set up for an attack. And our squad, which is 12 members, we were in a deuce-and-a-half truck. It's a pretty big size truck, like a wheat truck, about that size. And we were moving as a company, so we had about 10 or 12 vehicles, and we were going down. There's a river on our left side, and we were going down the road that was right next to the water. And the road, as we went over it, started caving off. So the truck was, as it was moving forward, it's probably going about 35 or 40 miles an hour. And as the dirt caved off, the truck rolled down like this and landed on its side in the river. And then, of course, that threw us all into the river. And then the truck fell over on top of us. And that's what this accommodation came from. And you can read it, when this is over.
Tell me about some of the special people you met.
Oh, I better check my notes here. Okay, there's one guy, and later on I'll tell a story about him. His name, I'll probably tear up on some of this. His name was John Lifer, and he was from Oregon, and he was just a good friend. We ended up being really good friends. And the other two people were the two drill sergeants at Fort Lewis, and one of them was a big, husky guy, probably 6'4", 6'5", all muscle, and his name was Sergeant Oliver. And the other one was about 5 foot tall, maybe 5'1". They were just totally opposites, but they were both muscled up. I mean, they were aggressive. And his name was Sergeant Copeland. So I'll tell a story about John Lifer here later in part of it.
What was the best and worst military food you were served, and why?
It really, it's really helped me over the years to stay calm when you're in a real tough situation, an emergency, or something's taken place, you know, out of the ordinary, where a lot of people will go from the situation or not want to get involved or something like that. I think it helped me to take action. You got to stay calm. You got to take action to try to either get help or help yourself, you know, to help whoever's in trouble. And I've used that all through my life. Really strong. And that's it, I think.
Okay. Tell me a funny story you experienced that you could only happen in the military.
Okay, this is where John Lifer comes back in. And I know I'm going to, you're going to see tears, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Starting in about the 3rd week of basic training, we had, our training was, we had a deal to use bayonets on rifles. And instead of using the bayonets on rifles, we'd had the training, you know, how to handle the rifle and everything. But to practice the moves, there was about 5 main moves that you used. There was a thrust deal, you know, to try to catch a person here. There was a backslash or a slash this way, and then a butt maneuver where you went this way, and then a backslash to come back across like this. Now, when we trained with pugil sticks, what they are, they're a club about, I don't know, about 4 feet long. It's about that big around, and it's got a deal that kind of looks like a boxing glove on each end of it. It's padded. Okay, instead of using the rifle with the bayonet on it, you use this pugil stick to fight someone. So the way we would practice that, we would practiced as a company. So that we'd split that up in 2 pieces. So we had 2 platoons of 24 people in a circle here and another one over here. Well, the DIs, to get 2 people to go in and fight, they wanted you to fight till one of you made a fatal move, you know, on the person you're fighting. Well, John Lifer, we found out the first time we done that, let's see, we'd do that about 2 times a week. Somewhere in your training, you'd just stop and they'd bring the pugil sticks out. We were going to fight for about an hour. And the DIs would call out names. And that would be like Smith and Carl or something like that, you know, their last names. And boy, they gave you those pugil sticks, and I mean, you came after it. But you were supposed to use those bayonet deals that they had trained you on. But that didn't happen all the time. Somebody would get hurt or, you know, getting mad. That was one deal. This was another deal to keep you from losing control of what you want to do. It was to teach you how to kill that person, really. And when the tempers flare, the calmness goes away, and the thinking stops. It gets pretty brutal. But they stop it. Supposedly, as soon as one person made a fatal move, strike, then they would call it off. Well, John Lifer, the first 2 times we done that in a week, he almost killed a couple of people. I mean, he was strong, and you couldn't hurt him. I mean, you could hit him in the head as hard as you wanted. He had a big, thick neck, you know, and big arms. It was like fighting a gorilla. So after that first week, they decided to put 2 people on him by himself. So the first week, when we get ready to do it the first time, they holler out, Cain. So that was me. Here comes the stick. And then it was Lifer. But then they called Mendoza. That's when they put 2 of us on him, and that was a guy that was in our unit. He was from Wichita. He was Mexican, and he'd fought before. He had boxing experience. So now they've got 2 of us on lifer. And boy, I'll tell you, we took a beating. He was an animal. Well, after, I'd say the first 2 weeks, he killed both of us every time. Well, we got together and we said, we got to stop this, you know. And we put a plan together where one of us had to get 90 degrees from him and the other one had to face him. And then normally the guy that was over on the side would get in a blow. But if you were the one that faced him, you just had to take a beating. That was all there was to it. And we done that till we got out of basic. So the 3 of us had fought each other 2 times a week for, it'd be 6 weeks. And you'd think, you know, that would kind of make you go opposite each other. But when we got out of AIT, Mendoza and myself, we were coming back home, and John, he was going to Vietnam. And when we separated, all 3 of us just cried. To be separated. It was really strong. And, you know, I've never talked to him since we left. Mendoza, I spent 6 years with him. About probably 8 or so years later, after the Vietnam War was over, the Vietnam Wall, they've got a portable version of it. And it came to Ponca City. And I ran down there. I wanted to see if John was killed. But fortunately, he wasn't. And I checked the wall again down at Oklahoma City, and he wasn't on it then either. So I know he made it through. But that was quite an experience. I guess that's it.
How does your military life affect? How does your military experience affect your life today?
I learned, probably the biggest thing I learned was you can do things that you think you can't do. But you have to prepare for it. You have to be calm. You can't stop thinking. You can't panic. Most times you can, even if you start to panic, you can get yourself out of it, but you have to believe in your capability. And I think what they gave me was I can do what I have to get done. Whether I think I can do it or not, I'll get it done if I can, if it's possible.
Please add any
anecdotes or stories.
Stories about your military service or any interesting stories that are not covered in the questions.
One thing, I think, did you ask me what I ate? Something about food, what the best and the worst was?
I think so.
But you didn't answer it.
I didn't answer? Oh, okay. Well, I ran into 2 things. the best food that I think I ate during basic NIT was ribeye steak. Little story there, though, was I spent about 14 days on KP. We weren't supposed to spend that many. About 4 was normal. But what got me about being on KP, I was what they call pot man every time that I went. And that you washed all the big pots and pans and all that stuff. It was the hardest job of being on, let's see, what's KP's kitchen police, I think that's what. And let's see, I've lost myself. Oh, on the ribeye steaks, we would go out, the truck would come in to deliver, you know, what they were going to eat for the next 2 days. And when the ribeye steaks came in, we had to unload half of those steaks and put them in the cadre, the people who were running the mess hall. We would put those in the trunks of their about 2 or 3 cars. They had a black market deal going, and I hated doing that, but you didn't have any choice. And then come to find out, probably 3 or 4 years after I came back home, there was a deal on the news where they had caught them doing that, and I guess a bunch of them got kicked out because they were stealing the meat, taking it downtown and selling it, you know, in a grocery store. Let's see. The food deal, I had 2 things that I couldn't stand to eat. One was the pancakes. I don't know what they were made out of, and I never did get to where I could eat them. Another one was the liver. I don't know how it was cooked, but it was green and brown. And once we went into the mess hall in basic, you had to be out of there. After you got your tray, you had to be out of there in 3 minutes. Now, the DIs just stood around and watched. They weren't, you know, it wasn't a true 3 minutes, but they kept it pretty close, you know. They knew about when you sat down and all that. And if you hadn't finished eating when they said the 3 minutes was up, you were gone anyway. That was in basic only. But